stuff. I knew something was up because they were all panicking to get me work for the rest of the week. I was like, this is not good. We actually shut down after we shot like the opening part of a scene.
Nice.
They came in, they said studio call. We're like, okay, bye.
All right. Hello, this is Scott Churchson from the Sports Den. Welcome, dudes and dudettes, Generation Xers, Generation Nexters, and anyone else I may have missed. Welcome to the Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please do remember to download the Zingo TV app at the app stores of iOS and the Android devices. When you download, make sure to rate, like, leave a comment, because both apps are free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku, and Roku sticks going forward. 2016 smart TVs also. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well out there. Scott Churchson, Rob Stats, Mr. Obi Schottenfeld rocking the hat. He's not the only one. I got a hat here named Wolf. Try and top that one, sir. This is the Sports Den, where we have all kinds of manner of things to discuss today, all kinds of sports. We're going to be talking some Super Bowl, obviously. We have a really obscure sport, and boy, if I got one for next week that was sent to me about an hour ago, which I'm not even going to tell you guys about until later. Anyway, how you gents doing?
I'm good. Good to be happy to be back on the air today. I think me and Obi, we're rocking the Boomer Esiason inspired wardrobe. Anybody here in New York knows that there is currently a feud going on between Boomer and someone else over his. It was just going on the air while I was coming home. They were making fun of his Cookie Monster suit that he wore at the Super Bowl. And
what was up with that thing?
Dude, Craig Carton's been on him all like for the last 2 hours about it, because apparently he must have said something yesterday. Then Boomer took a shot at him, and he's like, I'll reply to it later. And just for the next like 45 minutes, every chance he got, he was like, yeah, he had the Cookie Monster suit. I'm helping the FBI with an investigation as to, who stole the Blue Man Group's paint. I think it might have been Boomer. So
oh my God, that thing was insane. So
they were busted, and they're like, how do you not get, I was sitting there laughing. I'm like, oh, this is why we have wardrobe approval for our show. It's like wardrobe. No, it's too bright. No, like, and it's funny because that's a color. Like that blue is a color that's like a no for us. It's like no like hot like pop blue or anything, royal blue.
And also with that plaid thing that was going on, it was almost like a flannel version. If you had the stripes and everything going.
It gets that busy pattern where you're like, is he moving? Like what's going on?
And basically it kind of his suit, and the way it looked and the way it felt like it was moving was almost like the halftime show in that hallway where where you're just watching things strobe back and forth. And you're like, what the hell am I looking at? So, Obi, sir, how are you, man?
I am great. Good to be here. And I'm sure we'll get to it, but it's time to turn the page on football, give it a rest there.
Yeah, well, we got a little bit to talk about here. I do need to give you some level of props. I think most of the football world, outside of, devoted Buccaneer fans and yourself, had really kind of, and Eduardo as well, had really kind of, I think, talked about how the Tampa Bay Bucs were not going to be strong enough to take this game, let alone, frankly, a blowout. I remember distinctly telling you on the pregame show for Spanglish Sports World on Wednesday that if there was going to be a blowout in this game, it was not going to be done by Tampa Bay. It was going to be done to Tampa Bay. I am owning my mistakes straight up front here, that kind of guy. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was dead wrong there.
As was I. I think part of the problem was no one expected the Kansas City offensive line to be that bad. And not taking away from the Tampa Bay defense. I mean, first of all, JPP has never lost a playoff game now. He is like, Tom Brady was probably the happiest person in the world when he realized, he's not going against me today. Like he's going against the other team. Because that was like a fun little factoid that just got thrown in and kind of overlooked it. He was 8-0 with the Giants, and he ended up going. He's 12-0 in the playoffs. He's never lost a game. But what next gen stats? Like Mahomes ran around for 497 yards, like trying to save himself from pressure. He was pressured more than any other quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl, and it was for me like. But when it was all said and done, I was just sitting there thinking like this was the Murphy's Law game for Kansas City. Whatever could go wrong before the game went wrong. Whatever could go wrong during the game went wrong. And for all we know, whatever could have went wrong after the game probably went wrong.
You mean like Patrick Mahomes' mom tweeting about it?
I didn't even was
and tagging Giselle.
I didn't even know. It was just such a bad game for them in general. And for me, I said at the half, I walked out of the room, I was like, game's over.
Yeah.
The game ended. I won't blame it all on the rest of that pass interference call in the end zone was bad. Like that official didn't even look to see where the ball landed. The ball hit the wall out of the end zone. I'm like, he wasn't trying to catch. Yeah. I was like, that's a horrible call. But what made it worse was Andy Reid's coaching decision. If you just let them run the clock out, you go into the half down 8, that's a score and a 2-point conversion. That changes the complexion of the entire game the rest of the way. Even if you get the field goal, then they score. Those 2 or 3 times they were in field goal range, you probably kick those field goals, and it's not a blowout. I think Tampa still holds on to win, but it's not the blowout game that it turned out to be because the offsides penalty on the field goal, it was just like what could go wrong for Kansas City? Everything did.
Dropped passes. A lot of dropped passes.
The Travis Kelce drop in the beginning, the first drive was huge. He had another one later on.
I mean, so I did say, although I called Kansas City because I got high on the Mahomes drug that he is, I did, as Scott pointed out, say if it was going to be a blowout, it was going to be Tampa Bay. Now, I found out yesterday while watching all the post game, something that was probably really important for everybody to know going in, but we don't talk about anyone who's not a QB. That's Mr. Mike Remmers, the starting left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's played in a Super Bowl before. 5 years ago against Denver, and he was trying to stop a guy named Von Miller. This guy gives away MVPs to defensive linemen, and I think that would have added another layer to it. Totally would like to say before I go and rant, like Rob just did about the refs, the right team won the game, but the refs just took over the game, made it boring. I feel like there was a conference call that said, hey, look, you missed a whole lot of defensive callings against last week, both against Kansas City and Green Bay and against Tampa Bay. And you didn't call it to the last one and when it mattered most. So call them during the game. And so they did. I mean, Romo even said this team holds a lot. But 3 penalties that really got in my gut. I thought the unsportsmanlike conduct should have been offsetting if it should have been called at all. The interception, the holding on that call, now maybe it's different than pass interference, but it happened after the tip. So I don't know if the rule is different than pass interference or not. And then that PI in the end zone, not the one that got him halfway down the field, but which was the right call and the right defensive play. But the one in the end zone was horrific. It just did not need to be called. Then, like Rob said, Reid coached his butt the wrong way. He was horrific. Calling those timeouts on a team that was trying to, like, if the team wasn't trying to score a touchdown, then you do call those timeouts. But that team was planning on going down the field and scoring. You want them to feel the pressure of the clock. They didn't score till 6 seconds left, which means it would have been a field goal more likely than not. And then the field goal in the third quarter, at that point, you're down too much. That team has not been stopped, and you have to go and not kick that field goal. By the time they said, hey, it's time for the fans to vote for the MVP, I made it that far, went on, voted for Fournette, who I knew was not going to win because we want, I feel bad for Brady because the storyline was about Brady, but Brady played, the most pedestrian 3-touchdown football game you're ever going to see.
201 yards, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, he didn't do anything special. They didn't ask him to because it is a team game, and the defensive line took over that game, and Fournette and Jones were running through what looked like Swiss cheese on Kansas City. So, again, not to knock Brady. He won an MVP that even he's going, this what?
Yeah. At 201 yards is an MVP.
Yeah, he's going, this ain't mine.
Yeah. I mean, like if there's going to be –
Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, there's going to be anybody on that team that probably deserved – I would have considered giving it to Gronk. 2 TDs by any receiver typically is enough to get that receiver an MVP, much less a tight end in this case, and much less, I believe, the first player in Super Bowl history to score the first 2 touchdowns. So in this case, I mean, he managed it. The entire offense was on cruise control the rest of the way, and that's all they had to just manage the clock, run it out. That game was so far ahead that neither team scored in the fourth quarter, neither team had to. But I would have personally given it to Gronk because, again, 2 touchdowns by a tight end is not a common thing, plus his very presence of what it did for everybody else.
Yeah, I think it was there was part of me realized too, this game was the fourth quarter. If you were an Atlanta Falcon fan, oh my God, you had to be ripping your hair out. Because here's Brady, here's your division rival. And they're like, let us show you how we run out 8 minutes on the clock to win a Super Bowl. And I'm like, oh, the Falcon fans must have been losing their mind if they realized that. But it was, like you guys said, it was the epitome of like a team victory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Brady didn't do anything out of this world. Even Gronk, like, it wasn't like he wasn't beast mode Gronk. Like, I remember Eduardo brought it up. He goes, is he going to go off? He ran his routes. He caught his passes. He did what he's become that block, shed, catch, traditional style tight end. And that's what he did. That's all they needed him to do. And he was, and like you said, you could see they said it in the game, that comfort level. Gronk was like Brady's security blanket. He's like, big boy, where you at? Like Linus and his blanket from the Peanuts, man. He's like, come on, here's the ball. Let's do what we've been doing for all these years before, and let's do it again.
It felt, as opposed to being Gronk and Brady, who is an all-time great combination, it felt like a sort of great combination. It felt like Romo Witten. Like, I'm going to catch 3, maybe 4 passes. They're all going to be big. I'm not going to bowl people over. I'm going to run the right route, get where you want me to be. I'm going to be open. There was another, I didn't see the stat. I heard the conversation. He didn't throw into any tight windows, Brady. Like, he played like he was Alex Smith. Again, not to knock him. That's what was called for. And he played that game, but everything was clicking for this team. Everything. Even if, and that's where I started off. If the officials don't call any of those holdings, I still think they wouldn't go in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kansas City couldn't do anything on offense. It was just going to be, if they kept it close, it was going to be on the leg of Harrison Butker. Like, it was just going to be him bombing from 40 or 50 yards out, trying to keep, trim the lead and keep it from getting out of hand. But it was just like a perfect, well-managed game. And like, when did you ever think you'd be talking about like Tom Brady being a game manager, like in a Super Bowl? But that was Fournette, just hand it off to him and Ronald Jones, just safe passes. Okay, I'm going. What did Mike Evans have? They said like 1 catch. He had the couple of pass interference calls, but I think he had 1 catch. Godwin had a couple. It wasn't like they were lighting it up, but they just pounded. They basically just took the ball out of Mahomes' hands, and then when he got the ball back, they're like, "Oh, you're going to run for 497 yards to save your life." And to his credit, if you watch, the man, I'm convinced, has eyes in the back of his head. He threw the one pass where he turned the one on the sideline. You know what I'm talking about? He turned around, threw it, and that was another one I think was dropped by Darren Williams in the end zone. And I'm like, how do you make that throw? Like, you threw it, and you threw it to the perfect spot. Like, it was like you just kind of, okay, I know where he's going to be. I'm going to throw it. That's like the hardest thing in the world to defend if you're back there. Like, how do you not commit a penalty? And kudos to the Tampa Bay secondary on those plays. Like, they never grabbed. Like, they were just in coverage. They were sitting in that. And I think a lot of times, too, the Kansas City offense, like watching them all season, and they were there a lot of primetime games, there was nobody coming under the middle on that, like, shallow crossing route. Like, it was like Tyreek Hill's going deep. Like, okay, they send them deep. Send him and Hartman deep because there's 2 safeties. It'll keep them high. But then it was like just Kelsey, like mid-range. I'm like, where's somebody else coming under the middle? And the backs weren't even coming out quick.
I'd like to see the all-22 because my gut instinct is David was covering Kelsey like a blanket incredibly well. That's just because there was no he would scramble. First of all, Mahomes actually in this worst game of his career went from here to here for me. He was scrambling out of things, looked like he was throwing the ball away and hitting his receivers in the face mask. Like 3 times that happened. And the one that was not a good pass was out of the end zone and the guy caught it. I mean, like, he had 4 or 5 passes like that. You're like, that's any other quarterback is just get me the incomplete. He's going for completions. Kelsey dropped 2 passes, one at the end of the first half that was just no excuse. But he was double covered on both those plays. So I don't know it felt like there was 12 men on the field at some points but that's what 4 guys getting pressure. That's 4 guys on 6 and they were winning, right? Because you count the quarterback as one, couple of scrambles. And you forget, and Dominican Sue's an old man. He was the worst guy he's the worst guy on that defensive line. He was a number 5 pick or something like that. I mean, this was as good as the Giants defensive line was that beat him years ago.
That was another thing I thought of too. Like this was like karma coming back in Brady's favor, where like when he lost to the Giants twice, like he had the Patriots had the injuries. Like Gronk was banged up, and it was the Giants that got healthy at the right time down the stretch. Even Vita Vea came back, and all of a sudden I was like, I saw that they literally started 2 defensive linemen. It was Sue and Vita Vea, and then everything else was like linebackers and edge rushers. And I was like, this is interesting. And I'm like, oh my God, they're all over him. And you could tell that toe became a problem early too, because Mahomes was just limping. And I'm like, this poor guy is out there. You could see like noticeably, even just walking to the huddle, like, oh, listen, he couldn't push off. And thankfully it was only his front foot. So if it was his back foot, they would have been screwed because he wouldn't have been able to throw anything. But yeah, and like I said, Kelsey was the complete opposite of Gronk. Gronk had that quality versus quantity where every catch he made was clutch. And Kelsey, every time he dropped the ball, was at the worst possible time. Like third down would have been a first. And the other thing that went wrong was coming out of the half. I don't know if it was from the halftime show or whatever, but Hartman catches that screen, wipes out. When he would have gotten another 3 or 4 yards, it would have been third and short. And then on the very next play, Kelsey wipes out in like the same part of the field. And I'm like, is it the grass? Like, I was like, you guys weren't wiping out in the first half. And all of a sudden, like, what was there? It's usually part of the halftime show. They lost traction. I'm like, and they ended up having the punt. It stalled their first drive.
You know what? I forgot about that until just now. But at that moment in time, I wanted to take a look at what the first drives of second half of Super Bowls were like. Because it might be the only time you don't want to defer because you're coming out into a smoky stadium. Mm-hmm. You're coming out into a stadium that people have just been trampling down on. It might be the one game where you don't defer. I have to look at those numbers to really sense that. But that was my thought when Hartman fell.
Wasn't there a game a couple of years ago? They had they delayed it because of the smoke, like the pyro smoke didn't clear the stadium in time, and it was like in Arizona or something. And they're like, oh, we got to keep like open the roof the rest of the way or whatever. If you also like what I brought up on the preview special was like, if you're any other team in the league right now that's wanted to jump on this quarterback carousel, you're like, maybe I'm just going to go with an offensive line because the best quarterback in the league just proved that it doesn't matter how good you are. If there's nobody blocking for you, you're screwed.
I thought about you saying that in the Jets watching that game. I mean, you said you get Powell, just get Powell. If you can trade away for Watson, maybe, but get Powell.
It's interesting because if you look at a lot of the statistics for the game, though, they were pretty much right down the middle. I mean, logic would dictate that if you see the numbers by themselves and you see what it was, it should have been a closer game. But the turnovers were a huge part of that. Again, you talk about the drop passes. I mean, Mahomes, I think the best is still yet to come. I think this was what he needed in some ways because he got trounced. That entire team was kind of an embarrassment to what it could have been on the biggest stage that was out there. And they're going to rebound from this. I think they're going to do really well from it. The question is, in this case here, now, Stats, looks like you were right on this. You and I went back and forth a bit. Tom Brady has already said he's coming back. He has already said, basically, despite the fact that he has a limit 15 Super Bowl records, wins, appearances, MVPs, TD passes, passing yards, decades with a Super Bowl win, because I didn't even know that was a thing. Oldest quarterback to win completions, attempts, game-winning drives, three plus touchdown games, 300-yard games, and so on and so forth. I've already gone too long with that segment anyway. But you think he's going to continue? He said he's probably going to continue. Do they win an eighth? Does he win an eighth?
Not with Tampa. If he stays there, I just heard this morning like they're losing. Like Shaq Barrett's a free agent. They're Chris Godwin, a lot of these guys are going to go get paid. They got their ring. They're going to go get paid now. I don't think he does it with Tampa again, unless, I mean, he's Brady. So before I say not with Tampa, I'll also realize that he's a guy who's restructured his contract when he was with the Patriots numerous times to keep people around and good talent. So some of these guys might say, hey, if he's got one more year in him, let's stay, let's rock out, let's do a victory lap at the very least and see what happens next year. So, but if he does, I think he's probably be better off going somewhere else. Like maybe, he could be a guy because he's only on a 1-year deal, right?
2-year.
Oh, 2-year. Okay. So he'll be there. Yeah. Okay. So maybe a lot of them do stay for a year. I don't know. It depends. Cause I think Shaq Barrett's going to be out. Cause I think he's a little older. So some of the guys are younger. They could afford that, 1 year if they want to do a 1-year deal. I think Barrett's going to be out though. I think he's going to try to cash in as much as he can.
I think I don't want to truly try to make that prediction because I'm not. They played. They had a little New York Giants in them, in that they got high at the end of the season. Granted, they had a higher sort of floor than those Giants teams with Mr. Manning, but they had that feel to them of a team that got hot. But the flip side is their division looks to be so easy next year again, like, especially if they're going to go with Jameis Winston in New Orleans or somebody. So unless New Orleans somehow lands Watson, which I haven't heard a single person say, I don't know how they don't win the division. But the flip side is, when does it just fall? When does the arm fall off? You just don't know. And
I worry about, if you remember, after Brett Favre left the Jets and went to Minnesota, his first year was spectacular. Nobody thought that his year, going back in this case to back in division, that he would have the year that he had. The second year was where the arm fell off, like you said. And I worry about that with Tom Brady hurting his potential legacy. I mean, look, the man's more or less immortal, but I do worry about that a little bit, where he's going to have that massive drop-off year, and people will be like, Brady, but yeah, this happened later, the end of the career. You never know.
So, I mean, I think of two guys who had that, and we never talk about it. Jordan with the Wizards. We don't talk about that.
He still was averaging 21 points a game, though, back then, even at 40, whatever.
Kobe post-Achilles. All we remember is the last game, but he was miserable on a miserable team. So, and even Manning, who was horrific. He won the Super Bowl and walked away, but he was horrific. But we say that, but it doesn't. Favre, you don't talk about how that horrible really ended, unless you're talking about intentionally what's an example of somebody who ended poorly. You still think of Favre in Green Bay and even in the Jets and making it into the playoffs with Minnesota. So I'm not sure that stain has really sunk on anybody, and why would stick on this guy?
I would feel that basically, here's the thing. I think Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Brett Favre in this case, I feel that there are different dynamics when it comes to a media presence, because Peyton and Eli, they're very laid back. They're easy. I mean, they were in their pajamas in that commercial, with their dad, which I thought props on that. That was cool. But Peyton was always that NFL good guy. Tom Brady doesn't have, and even Brett Favre don't have that innocent good guy image there, where they are more ripe for honestly being ripped on. There was a dude on Facebook, I'm not going to mention Sheldon by name, who's like, 7 rings or not, he's still overrated, because you have so many of the haters out there. The fact that Boston outperformed Tampa in the TV ratings for the Super Bowl shows how strong a presence people have. And frankly, in a lot of ways, the animosity that people have towards Tom Brady. And it could be a jealousy factor. This is a good looking dude with, frankly, a full head of hair, better than I've got. I mean, buckets of money, Super Bowl rings at the wazoo, supermodel wife, on and on and on. He is everything that basically every guy wishes they could be. And the certain people, I think, would look at that and end up using that as fuel to troll, to look for that reason, whatever that reason is. So back to the original point, if he does have that kind of a bad year and that soft year, that last year Brett Favre year, remember, Brett Favre had the same mockery thing going on a little bit as well. It could happen. People will look at it as a reason to troll him more than, say, Peyton Manning.
Well, so to the Favre thing, though, too, remember, he had a little something else going on at the same time that
he
hurt
did,
his
yes.
image.
But there was
a great point, though, that was made was, now that Brady's not on the Patriots, he seems to be a little more likable in general. Like, he's not part of the evil empire anymore. It's almost like someone used another Star Wars reference of, like, he became like the Kylo Ren of the NFL, where, like, you hated him, and then at the end you loved him because he was back on the right side of the Force.
We can talk about the sequels in another time, but rumor has it the sequels are no longer going to be canon, which I could talk about it another time if I ever chose to.
But to that sort of change, I think there's another thing that happened, in that as every year Manning's gone is good for Brady, because everything you said about Brady is true, Scott, except for one thing. Manning is just so much more personable. I mean, as I heard somebody say,
I talk about the good guy thing.
Yeah. I don't care how much better Brady is in Manning in football. Brady will never catch Manning in retirement. Like just he's not going to make commercials that like those commercials with Brad Paisley. Nobody's not that guy. And if he tries to, Manning's going to get angry and do something about it to take it up another notch. You'll see Manning in movies or something. But it's just, I think that so that I don't know what that's about. I might even brought that up, but
yeah. That's okay. No,
it is a great point though. Peyton is definitely the more personable of the two in terms more. I want to dare even say charismatic. Like he's just more polarizing. Like people are drawn to Peyton in a more positive way, and it's almost like it's in spite of like people even made fun of Peyton and even Eli. They used to call him like, "Oh shucks," like country boys and stuff. But now, like, you love that. You're like, oh yeah, Peyton. Like he's always out there just kind of goofing around, being him. Then you're like, oh, it's kind of cool that. That's who he is. Like he's this playful guy. And Brady's always been like when he was with the Patriots, it was a business thing. And now you are starting to see more of it with the Bucs. They said it about Gronk too. They said Gronk is just out there playing carefree football. Like he's not worried about the militant mindset that he had to deal with in the Patriots. And he's just like, yeah, man, I can go be Gronk and party on in Tampa Bay and catch some passes.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Gronk. They said, so when did you decide that it was when you were gonna come back? He said, as soon as Tom called me, I said, I was just waiting for you to leave. Where are we going?
Yeah, but I think that's a big part of it. It's also in some ways when you see, when a manager or a coach gets fired and they bring in somebody else, you have the hard-nosed guy and then you have the personable guy. In some regards, I think the mindset of Belichick in New England and then bringing it and then going down to Tampa Bay with Arians, it's a different, softer, more personable mindset. And that is, I think, for people like Tom Brady, personally, I think for Tom Brady, he had enough, because I mean, you look at what Bill Belichick is and you look at his persona, how long can you deal with that? Props for him for dealing for close to 20 years. But I mean, we've all had that one boss that we really hate and then they leave and someone else comes in, and you're just like, oh, that's where I think a lot of this was.
I've never had that one boss I really hated on a high-performing team, though. And that's the Belichick difference.
Yeah. But usually with my luck, it went the other way. I had the really good one. They got fired out and then brought in somebody who was hell.
Yeah, Belichick had a little more slack because he said when you're winning, you're like, okay, I'll deal with this because we're doing well. And then I think as the last couple of years went by, you're like, okay, we're not winning as much as we used to. Or Brady probably felt that he's like, okay, this is the end of the line for me. Like I wrote it out as long as I could. I think Belichick's still a little mad because they lost Garoppolo and they wanted to keep Garoppolo and then get rid of Brady, but Brady'd him.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bill Belichick wanted that deal to be done.
Yeah. And it's not really surprising that Brady left while he still had something in the tank because that is what they do in New England, right? I mean, he was going to let go of Brady 2 years earlier knowing he had something in the tank. So for him to have something in the tank and have been finally gone shouldn't be surprising because that's how Belichick does it. He's ready. He when he says next guy up, he means it. He's probably the angriest guy that they had to go to. He's like, who do we have now? We're surfing this market. So he's probably, there's some of that going on too.
It's wins above player. Yeah. It's wins above the loyalty in this case. Yeah, he would have dropped Tom Brady a while ago if basically Garoppolo was going to be it, but he got overruled on that. So now you're seeing the end results on both sides of that fence. Now does Garoppolo come back? Probably not. But it's New England is now in a state of disarray from that decision. But again, I think when it comes down to it, I think Tom Brady and Gronk, Antonio Brown, I think too, just wanted to get into a little bit more of a carefree, laid back environment. And admittedly, one where Florida is a lot more appealing in December. You go to Florida in December, you go to New England in December. One's going to take a toll more than the other one will. So
like Antonio Brown didn't exactly come from a militant.
But
seems like he was on the Steelers and the Raiders, man. He did go to the Patriots beforehand, but yeah,
he got the Patriots mainly down. But he got enticed in by the feel of everything that was going on there. So that's the Brady factor also. You fact that you have somebody there, okay, some people may leave, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to sign in Tampa to be able to play alongside, not against him, and seeing what he did single-handedly to a team that had struggled for over a decade.
And I think there's going to be defensive players who want to play for Bulls as well. So again, that doesn't mean that Shaq Barrett's going to stay. because Shaq Barrett came over there, wasn't anything, had 2 years with Bulls, has been great for 2 years, and he's going to want to cash in. Whether Tampa's going to do that or not is another story. But there's probably somebody else out there who's like, all right, I'd like a swan song. Maybe this is where I go. I don't know who those guys are right now. Free agency swings around, and also we get the lower salary cap. But there's going to be one or two guys, if Brady stays on defense, who are going to go, I'll help him out.
Yeah, like I said, there's that attraction factor, and that's a lot to be said there. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. For them, it's all back to business as usual. One night off and then back to it.
So that concludes our NFL coverage.
I was going to say,
I think we're good on football for a while, unless like something crazy happens, like a trade. We're on a football hiatus for a little bit now.
Not to mention the fact that we on a 55-minute show, we spent 4 and a half minutes on this. So, okay. So we're going to move a little bit into a different direction. It is time, I think, for Obscure Sports Review. This is the ongoing segment that we've got. I am digging this one because I happened to find it this morning. It is an endurance test where basically you've heard the saying, basically, that XYZ in your pocket, are you just happy to see me? In this case, is that a ferret in your pocket? Or are you just happy to see me? The whole idea is that you basically put a ferret down your pants and run as long as you can. This originated in England because most of the sports that we come up with typically are. But you guys want to run with this, or you want me to go with it?
You can start with it. I have the video playing in the background right now again, and I'm like trying not to laugh out loud watching it. Like I think I'm deathly afraid, not deathly, but like ferrets kind of scare me.
Ferrets, here's the thing. I mean, I had a couple of ferrets a bunch of years ago, and they're a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie to you. They do smell a little weird, and you have to set up, frankly, litter boxes in the corner because they're inclined to poop in corners. That's just how they roll. So you just have a little tiny scooper over in the corner. That's just how you run with it. But ferrets are actually a really kind of a fun little animal, lives 6 to 8 years. But somebody somewhere obviously got the idea to shove one down your shorts and just say, okay, run until basically you give up, you're in pain, you're done. So, Obes?
Well, yeah. As anyone who's been following me for the last few hours know, I've been questioning if this is even safe for work, but I gave it only a B in stupidity, not the full A.
Okay.
Because there is the opportunity where you're training this, and it's your own ferret, so you have a relationship, you train it. Mm-hmm. The guy who tries to set the world record says the trick is to feed your ferret, so it is your own ferret. So there is a bit of strategy, so I gave it a B, not a full A.
Okay.
Obscurity, I went with a full A. When the sport is actually saying, when the people who are promoting the sport are saying that it's a dying sport, that is a solid A in obscurity. It's the kind of thing that looks like it has its moments, like it's having right now on our show, and then it happily vanishes. Playability, enjoyability, F, no, and no. Maybe I'd give it a shot if I could wear protection and let it only take out my legs, but no, I'm not doing that. And watchability, one of the stories, I'm also giving this an F, although Rob is enjoying it on TV right now. I mean, when you read about the guy trying to set the world record and he's busy setting the world record and the fans leave, the stage crew comes and starts taking down the stage around him, you go, maybe this isn't all that watchable. And on its list, this is number 4 on Pains for Pain's Sake Sport.
Okay.
I'm not going to vote it to sport either.
All right, Rob, you want to handle it or you want me to?
It is hysterical if you watch the video. Like I was just watching it because I'm laughing because there was one part of the video where the ferret's head actually pops out of the guy's waistband. And I'm like, oh God, it looks so inappropriate, but it's obscurity. Yeah, it's absolute like A for obscurity because it's like, who would even think I'm going to, like, the only time I could think like functionally of like, I'm going to put a ferret in my pants is if I'm trying to shoplift one from PetSmart or something. It's like, I'm just going to shove them down there and like, it's wiggling around. Because I've seen bits on like movies and stuff where like a squirrel or something runs up somebody's pant leg and I'll be like, that's like the most uncomfortable thing in the world. Even if it's your own ferret, it's still got claws and everything. And you start running around or something, it moves the wrong way and panics, like it's just latched onto you, it starts clawing at your leg. So for me, playability was, if you have a ferret, it's very easy to play. You just need a ferret and a pair of sweatpants and some like, high water boot, like water flood boots. But playability, for like, I would not want to play it. Pain, yeah, there's the risk of that type of pain. No, thank you. Stupidity, yeah, it's kind of dumb. It's definitely like on the video I watched, it calls it a pub game, and I'm like, this is appropriate because you'd have to be highly intoxicated to kind of think this up and think this was a good idea. But it's definitely like obscurity and all that. Yeah, it's an absolute A for obscurity, but I would not play it or anything like that.
All right. And just to clarify, you guys have never had ferrets in your life, right?
No, I have friends who have, but the one thing that, like, I'm an animal lover, but like you said, the ferret smell for me was always like a big turn off. Like, people who have them are like, yeah, you kind of get used to it. I'm like, when I walk in someplace, I'm like, oh, you have ferrets. And it's actually, I have like pet allergies, and ferrets, like cats and ferrets are probably like the two things that trigger my allergies more than anything. I think ferrets more than cats. Like just the smell of ferrets, I'm like, oh God, like I start sneezing, my eyes are watering. At least a cat, I can play with the cat as long as I don't touch my face afterwards. But like ferrets are like instantly, I'm like, oh my God, like spazzing out.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the problems that happens there too. But it's funny, when you live with a ferret, you get used to the smell like anything. But when you come in for the first time, you pick up that scent, you're like, okay, you either know what it is or you're like, what the hell is this thing? But in my particular case, having had ferrets before, Linus and Cinnamon, rest in peace, we had, from a stupidity standpoint, I'm going to give it an A-. I think it is really weird to basically take an actual weasel and shove it down your pants. But it's not going to say one of the dumbest things and the weirdest things out there, because the truth of it is, when it comes down to it, ferrets like that kind of thing. As long, they like hiding in things. They like hiding in socks. They like hiding in certain things. So the ferret, in some bizarre way, would have a little bit of fun with it because they like the dark part of it. They like hiding in certain things. So that's why I'm only giving it an A- instead of a pure A on this case. Obscurity, yeah, A. You got to be really ripped to basically, again, take an actual animal, shove it down your pants and say, how long can I run before the pain gets to be too bad? The more drunk you are, maybe the less pain exists. Maybe the more further you can go with it. Playability, I would try it once. I'm going to give it a B in this case, just to be able to say, if I have the rapport built with the animal, and they trust me and I trust them, again, Linus and Cinnamon, I would be willing to give it a shot, because again, there's a trust factor involved. They know you, and they would probably have a fair amount of fun with it. The watchability side, yeah, kind of a C, because again, I don't want to have to look at a weasel in someone's crotch. I mean, to each their own. You want to do that, that's up to you. But for me, not so much. But yeah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, watchability, like I'd probably give it a C, just because like the video I was watching, there were the moments where you're laughing hysterical just for all the wrong or like inappropriate reasons of like, there's a ferret in your pants and it looks ridiculous, it looks not safe for work. So yeah, there's that, but then otherwise, yeah, I think there's no long-term watchability in it. You're like, okay, like it's ferret still in your pants. Like, unless there was something bizarre going on where it was like just raging like a mosh pit in there, you're like, oh, this is gonna like burst out like Alien in the movie or something.
If you know them and they trust you, then it's fine. I mean, I have memories of them crawling up my leg to sit on me on the couch. So that's where, like I said, I think it'll be okay from the trust factor standpoint. But if it's one that you've never met and they don't know you, oh yeah, they're gonna attack you. It took a while for those two ferrets to come around. But Obi, any final thoughts there?
I don't trust the ferret enough to give it a try.
Okay.
That's all I got.
That's fair. I can respect that. Okay, so we got about 13 minutes left at this point. Find us on YouTube. Find us on Spanglish Sports World, SpanglishSportsWorld.com. Facebook, the whole shebang. Twitter, I've been through that road before. I want to give congratulations to the New Jersey Devils. They will be playing a game in 2 days. They haven't played for about a week.
No, they will not. No, they will not.
They canceled Thursday too?
Yeah, they are off till, I heard this morning. I'm going to look at my calendar real quick. I heard they were off till Monday now.
They pushed it back. Oh,
15th. Good. I heard they were postponed till the 15th this morning. I just heard that. Like, I was like, oh, I think earlier this afternoon.
Okay. This must've been brand new, because when I looked at it earlier, it was still on Thursday. No, now it's actually, they pushed it back to the 16th. So Devils Rangers 7 p.m. because.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. There are.
They might have reported that they were off till the 15th was their last day off before they played again.
All right, my bad on that, because again, in this particular case, now, okay, this is why the list has gone up. It was originally at 17 players on the COVID protocol. Allegedly, it came out because Kyle Palmieri first got it, and then it just builds from that point. So, of course, the Devils got a devil. My team has got a devil because now they're at 19 on the COVID-19 list. This is probably going to put that team requiring him to play somewhere about 50 some odd games, 48 games in a stretch of about 80 days. They're going to have to play more than one game, basically probably about 2 games out of every 3 days for the rest of the season. That's going to kill the team. And for me personally, having hope gone into the season, I think hope's gone.
I don't think you need to give up hope. I don't think that with 3 teams in situations like the Devils are, the Sabres, and there's another team that's missing a bunch, at some point you got to go, we can't make all these games up. We're going to have to figure out another way to do this. Mm-hmm. So don't give up hope just yet, because the word logistics is in there, and I don't know that this particular sport in this particular league is going to be able to enforce its need to have all its games. Same with the Wizards in basketball. They're not going to be able to make up all those games. It's a little different in basketball because there's no points, and the losses and how you lose and if you win in overtime matter differently than just no game at all. But I think they're going to have to come up with a different way of determining who makes the playoffs without everyone playing the same amount of games.
It'll be interesting, but no, I'm not holding out a lot of hope here. But then again, as a suffering Devils fan, I'm used to that kind of thing. The MLB has officially come out. I want to do a show on this coming up in the next couple of weeks. I had a really long conversation with somebody earlier today with regards to the new rules that are in place. The 7th inning doubleheader, runners on second. We talked a little bit about this last week. It's official in this particular case, but I want to get your thoughts when it comes to the future of MLB. What other changes do you think they're going to make?
I like the new, actually I like and I don't like. I'm kind of split. I was hoping they would have kept the universal DH.
That's one that did drop for the moment anyway.
Yeah, they got rid of it. It's, not in the National League anymore. I like the idea of the 7-inning doubleheaders. I mean, it's a college thing, but I heard today people like the purists were out in rage. Yeah. It's not baseball. It's 7 innings. But it's like people were saying, on the other side, everyone's like, you're losing audience because the game is too long. Like, you need a pitch clock. You need to keep the batters in the box. These are all things that we've adopted in, whether it's rec leagues or, in the college game, like you got to keep one. I think it was college a couple of years ago. They had a rule. You had to keep 1 foot in the batter's box. Like, you could only step out with 1 foot, and you couldn't because you get these guys who go through the whole, I remember Nomar Garciaparra was the king of step out, undo my wristbands 3 times, bless myself, step back in. Even getting out of the dugout for him was a process. The dirt, yeah. He went up the steps, down the steps, up the steps, down the steps. I'm like, the superstitions are a little ridiculous. And if you ever watch these guys take batting practice, they don't do any of this in BP. Mm-hmm. They stand there and they swing and then they just reset. It's why would you not do that in the game? You get into this rhythm, swing, okay, the pitch wasn't there, just reset. And you get some of these guys who are it's a show within the game. I'm going to do this and I'm going to clean myself up and then I'm going to strike out looking, but at least I looked good doing it,
I think a lot of this, and the purists are wrong. And that stuff that you're talking about, that used to be fun. Tuffle Shuffle, when Tim Tuffle used to come up. Those things were part of the character.
You're dating us with that, by the way.
What?
You're dating us with that.
Yes, I am. And I think those are part of the character of the game, and that part of the game has kind of gone away. Now we look at the home run tosses of the bat, which makes the purists angry. But that's the new character of the game, and you know what? That doesn't slow the game down. Whether you take 10 seconds or 11 seconds to trot the bases. But I think that there are a need for some freshening of the rules without making the game different. The universal DH is for sure one of them at this point. Even as a National League fan, I'm done with it. It's stupid. These guys can't hit. I don't want to see a bunt.
You're talking pitchers in this case, right?
What?
Assuming you just to clarify, you mean pitchers in this case, right?
Yeah. I don't need to see John Smoltz batting 160 who can lay down the sacrifice bunt.
But you'd miss out on Bartolo Colon hitting that home run in San Diego, and watching Gary Cohen lose his mind, which still gets played on SNY like about 4 times a month right now.
You missed out on there has been a lot of great hitting pitchers like Mike Hampton. Yeah, but they're not great hitters. They're great hitting pitchers. We don't. That's like that was a bad shortstop in the day. It was a good hitting pitcher. So it's like let's get rid of that. I don't know. Maybe you have to. I think it was you, Scott, on one of our shows that we were on, who suggested maybe if you get tagged out stealing, then you're out for the next inning. You can't be in the field. And how do you want to arrange your players that way? Just something crazy and different. I know the purists are going to be brokenhearted when the stats start to change. There's less outs, so there's more RBIs, or there's more outs and 100 RBIs is the thing. But it does need to get something new and different to get everybody to refocus on it. And the universal DH is the simplest one to do that.
Oh yeah. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but how would you feel about doing a show upcoming? We got to do a show about our top 5, which I think we want to do. I want to do that next week, where we're going to talk about the top 5 sports plays of all time or sports games of all time and why they matter, either in person, on TV, whatever the case is. I've got a few in my head that I definitely want to roll with. I want to do that. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm also open to the idea of doing something where if we were going to recreate baseball from scratch, you are the new dictator of baseball. No unions, no anything. This is the edict of what we're going to do. What would you create? How would you create baseball to be the best sport again? I'm open to that. I'm open to that, maybe some consideration on that. Whatever it is,
I think one thing I would outlaw is the shift.
Yeah, okay.
Like the shift. But if people knew how to, I used to love watching Big Papi drop one down the third baseline because everybody was on the other side of the field. He was like, bink.
One thing I will say is I've got an old PlayStation 1 game over there, All-Star 95. And not all the players are gone at this point. But what's interesting is you can play in old style Yankee Stadium, the one that was 510 feet to dead center. One of the funnest things about that is hitting a ball into the gap, because a ball in the gap goes 450 yards or 50 feet and it never actually hits a fence. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, a possible. Like I said, if we're going to recreate baseball to make it a sport again, what would we do?
It wasn't the Houston Stadium like that too when it first came out. It had some crazy gap. Yeah, the hill, but it was deep too. Like it was, you'd hit a shot in the gap and you're like, oh my, do you see the outfielders running like a track meet? You're like, where'd the ball go?
Yeah, it was like fence, and then bam, they got this little lip up at the top. And then I think they fixed that too. But it had a hill.
Well, I think the hill was to prevent the ball from getting there and giving the outfielder a chance to get it. That's what I always thought about that hill.
I don't know, just a weird design all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to play Earl Weaver baseball in 88, 89 on the computer.
God.
You could build your own stadium.
Nice.
So it was crazy. Somebody had like a 500 to right and 300 to left or something crazy. Like, what is that?
Well, the old New York Giants stadium was very was very circular. It was like 258 feet down each line and like 430 or something in dead center. So it was really unique that way.
Fun fact, I didn't know what the pesky pole was in Fenway Park until there's a great story for another day. Until after I had breakfast with Johnny Pesky and didn't know who he was. And literally walked back into the hotel room and was like, who's Johnny Pesky? And they're like, why? I'm like, because I just had breakfast with him. He's a really nice guy. And they're like, the pesky pole in Fenway Park. I'm like, Hall of Fame second baseman for the Red Sox. I'm like, oh, okay. I just pretended like I knew what was going on.
You're like, Red Sox, that's hockey.
And that's why he was such a nice guy, right? Because he's like, oh, this guy. Okay.
Maybe. I'll be honest with you. When I started out in the film industry, I had a conversation with Bill Buckner about 86 in the Game 6. Don't start a conversation with that man on that.
No, I don't think so.
That was a rookie mistake, if there ever was one. But we should talk about that pesky conversation and that breakfast at some point. I do want to ask you a couple of questions in that regard. All right. Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
I'm just happy where like football season was great. A lot of, kudos to the NFL for getting through it.
Yeah.
In spite of everything, they pulled it off. So
And
the
they deserve
streaker was probably the highlight of the game for most people.
Yeah. I feel like the NFL season kind of was like Game of Thrones, all that build up to an ending that wasn't quite there.
You know what? Like I said this to my dad, we hadn't had a stinker of a Super Bowl in a couple of years. Even the low scoring Patriots Rams game you were watching the whole time.
Yeah.
This one, I was like, we were due for a stinker. And I think it caught us by surprise because we didn't expect it to be this one.
Yeah, there wasn't that this game didn't really feel like it had that aspect. I'm just like to point out that Joel Embiid is staying healthy and the Sixers still have a shot at this thing. It might be my sign off for the next few months.
Well, you know what? You have a show of your own starting pretty soon, right?
I do. Next,
what is that show?
That show is going to be Friday nights at 10 p.m. right here on Zingo TV, channel 250.
Mm-hmm. What's the name of it, by the way? I forget.
Our friend Jared will be my first guest this Friday night.
Very cool. All right. So, yeah, definitely check that out. Basically, he's got a lot to be able to talk about. I think you guys are covering our college basketball in that.
Yes, we are, especially.
Yes, cool. This show can be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. Check it out at SpanglishSportsWorld.com, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Live it, love it. It's awesome. All the news and all the programming you're ever going to need, it's on there. Anyway, that's going to do it for us. Thank you again for tuning in. Appreciate it. You guys rock. For Mr. Obi Schottenfeld, Mr. Rob Stats, I'm Scott Churchson. This was the Sports Den. Drop us questions, comments, ideas, compliments, complaints. We're all good with all of it.